You're listening to Final, a show about creative work and the work behind it. This is take 3 of this intro. Stop me if this feels personal. You're talented, you're working hard, but you still question whether you're qualified for the creative role that you're already in. The best creative careers don't follow rulebooks. Often, they may throw them out entirely. Chris Conley went from Apple retail to design school at 27 to co-founding Thread, a thriving creative studio in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, proving that sometimes unconventional paths lead to the best creative work. 5 years ago, Chris was questioning whether he deserved the title creative director at all while wearing 50 different hats at Thread. Today, he's built a team that challenges traditional agency models and serves some really dope clients, ones that he couldn't even tell me under our friend DA. But the journey to get there is not what he was expecting when he set out. Creative careers rarely follow a traditional playbook, which is both liberating and terrifying. If you've ever felt like an imposter in your career, questioned whether your unconventional path is valid, or wondered how to transition from being an individual contributor to a creative leader, then this conversation's for you. Chris, thanks so much for joining me. When we were even just talking a second ago, we don't really know each other all that well necessarily, but even as we were just talking, discovering all kinds of crazy connections and things like that. But I feel like we've known each other through the Twitterverse. I'm not going to call it X. I can't bring myself to call it X. And we've kind of orbited each other in different ways across our careers. And I've really loved following Thread's evolution, especially over the last 3 or 4 years. If you guys have doubled down into digital design and things like that, it's been really rad to see the passenger coffee work. Obviously loved that. Still waiting for my bag. I'm
gonna order it while we're on today. Be a live test.
Really, what I really need is what's the meat or the burger company you guys worked for?
Cavilar.
That's what I need. I need a really good burger mailed to me. But yeah, Chris, if you just want to, I'd love for you to just share a little bit about yourself and who you are, what you do, things that make you tick, whatever you want to share.
Yeah. I don't really get to introduce myself very often, so this is a fun little exercise. So Chris Conley. I'm a designer and a dad, and I guess I go by creative director and help run a small studio in Lancaster, Pennsylvania called Thread. We're 6 people deep at the moment, just loving life and getting after it. Yeah. Multi-disciplinary by trade. We do photo, video, design, digital work. Life is full of lots of different hats that I wear, but primarily it's just, being in the studio, building into the design and digital culture here. And then, being a dad right now is primary life role. So
awesome. And yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Thread, before you joined the team, was primarily in film, even documentary space. And then when you joined the team, which I think was only a year or so after Thread had begun and you joined on as the next co-founder, you're the one that really brought that digital design foundation and branding and branched out into other, I guess, added the full service side of things.
That out. Good memory is the first thing I'll say. I'm really surprised that you remembered that. So Thread started in 2018 as a film production company, kind of on the heels of some studio kind of production life that Zach, our founder, had kind of been in. He was like, I want to do something different, passionate about storytelling, passionate about film. So he's more of a director, DP at this point. And when I joined the team, obviously being a designer, there's a lot of different types of designers in 2025. I feel like I'm a little bit more old school, but I feel like maybe a better way to describe what makes me tick is I really am passionate about the way ideas move across people, across culture, the way that brands are built and experienced. And so design was really just a vehicle for that to happen. And I think one way to kind of button that all up or put a bow on it is story. And that's a very common kind of parallel that people draw in our space, I feel like. maybe in a cliche way, but I think it is really meaningful how stories are applicable to so many different things. So in 2019, I joined the team, and I kind of thought I'll just like take the designer hat off and I'll just get into film. I'll be a producer. I'll do whatever. I'll carry lights. I Filmmaking is such a wonderful
So
kind of
fun.
like medium, and it's so cool, and there's so much nuance to it, and there's a whole world to learn there. And so I was really excited about that. But our first clients were kind of more in the commercial space, still kind of like doc style, very heart centric, and all that kind of stuff. But definitely like needed things for advertising and telling their story and kind of like basic marketability. And I feel like Zach and I went to our first meetings, and you're selling very expensive films to people, which they think are very important to the growth of their business. But a lot of small to medium sized businesses don't really know how to leverage films well. And that's when we were like,
Mhm.
okay, it's not like we're trying to just be multidisciplinary because there's money on the table. It was actually just really a lot of conviction around the best way to serve these people is to actually be more holistic in our offering. And because I come from a branding and design background and digital background, it just made sense. Like let's actually pivot thread, and let's be, I tend not to say full service just because we don't really do, there are things that we don't do, but be multidisciplinary in some sense. Who knows? Eventually, it might be full service, but we don't get into like actual marketing. I feel like and paid, and all that kind of growth centric stuff. So that happened in 2019. Is kind of middle of 2019 is when we pivoted to kind of being more of a full service or multidisciplinary kind of studio. Zach, as a filmmaker, very much aligned with it. So it wasn't like I forced him into it. He was definitely down for it and excited about it. Building brands is in some form or fashion like very close to his heart too. It just happened to be film was the kind of primary vehicle for him to get into brand building. Yeah.
Well, and I love the attitude you shared too about when you first joined the team, thinking, "Oh, maybe I'll mostly be in film. I'll put this other thing, put this other hat away, and not be the designer on the team." Um, which I think says a lot about what I feel like I've picked up on as I've done the research I was saying that I did to know more about your background and stuff. That you've done a lot of different things in your career, had some pivots and changes. It sounds like some risk taking and starting ventures and things like that, which I think is really cool. And I'd love to, you were even started to share before we started recording about some of those early days. And I don't know what this will spark for you, but I'm curious if you can even remember, like, what was the first project, creative project that you can remember being paid for? Like the very first one that, and that
Absolutely.
could be high school. Maybe it was $2 for doing a drawing for somebody, who knows?
Well, I mean, if we were to say not paid for, I did do a lot of creative work in high school. I was big into the music, industry in general. Was it playing in bands, playing shows, and so just by nature of being in proximity to that, there's so much to kind of get your hands dirty with creatively. You know, coding on your MySpace site. Working on
Yes.
album artwork and posters, like that. All of that was like at my fingertips then, but it really didn't turn into anything paid until much later. And so I think my first paid project ever was actually for my sister-in-law, Brittany. So I worked at Apple for a decade. Long story short, I feel like working at Apple was like a really great experience. There are things about it, as a young 20 something that I despise too. But I think what I got to kind of be inside of was kind of a culture that's like fine tuned, like incredible brand experience. So from internal culture to external culture, everything is really, really dialed there. In fact, I think everyone should like work there for 6 months just to kind of get a taste of it. Like they are so intentional about so many different things. That would
And
make
what did you say you did on the Apple team?
I kind of did a little bit of everything, except for I was never a genius. So I was a creative before that. I was in sales there, so worked in retail, not on the corporate side. So I got to kind of like experience how customers interacted with that brand, and I think what that kind of sparked in me as someone who was into creative and design and kind of, I didn't know about it. I think I was into brand building but didn't really know it, and I think being exposed to
Mhm.
that, my brain just started kind of ticking all the time and kind of trying to figure out, well, how do I get into this world? And my brother-in-law and sister-in-law were just always really encouraging early on with me with design. And at one point, Nathan and Brittany were like, Chris, you should just like try to do this as with some freelance work. And so they actually bought me an iMac for Christmas one year. It's like my
Wow.
first Christmas as the brother-in-law in the family. And Brittany was running her like wedding photography business, uh,
Yep.
which was thriving at the time. This was like 2012, so not everyone was a wedding photographer at the time. And yeah, I worked on like a logo and a website for her for like, I don't even know, $100 or something like that. It was like so little. But I think that was my first paid actual where someone gave
I
me
love it.
money for design work. Everything else before that was like just completely free and fun and experimental.
So awesome. So growing up, were you seen as creative, or did you think of yourself as creative, or did your friends or family think of you as
Yeah,
creative?
yes and no. I kind of had like multiple identities. I'm very extroverted, kind of a generalist, more or less. I was the kind of kid in high school who had friends in like all the different friend groups. I primarily played baseball in high school and then a little bit in college, but I I went to a high school in Virginia Beach that was the Arts Academy. Some really great creatives have actually come out of that high school, but like I think because you're in a school like that and there's so much focus on the creative arts and really a fine arts focus, not design, I think I definitely did not think of myself as like a creative person. Like it was something that, I mean, these kids were incredible. They probably still are incredible. I can't draw very well, or at least I couldn't in high school. And so I was also in band, and then I played volleyball and baseball. So I was kind of all over the place, but I don't think I would have kind of acknowledged that part of myself. I did want to get into architecture, but that was like a different, like I didn't really associate it with art as much as it felt as like a creative output, but it felt more kind of like structured and had like some more, yeah, just more to it for me to kind of like kind of like find myself in. Um, then I found out there's a lot that goes into architecture, and there's a lot of math and a lot of engineering, and decided that that wasn't the right track for me. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't have associated anything creative like that until this kind of like season of my life, early 20s, where all of a sudden, there's kind of these opportunities starting to pop up where my friends need design work being done, and I'm the one who talks about it the most and cares about it. So might as well give him a chance and see how it goes. So I think that project with Spencer that you and I talked about earlier, I think that was the next project, like after that.
Okay,
Yeah. So
cool.
very early on.
That's how it goes. One leads to the next.
Exactly. That's exactly.
Uh, w- what prompted the move from Knoxville to Lancaster? Was that joining the team with Thread, or were there other things that led to that
Oh, no.
change?
So I worked at Apple for really like for a decade. I didn't leave Apple until 2017. Just for a little bit of context. Design kind of became like at that moment, so this would have been like 2012, 2013. Design was just kind of a fun thing I did on the side, United Pursuit, there being a band, there's some opportunity there. Nathan and Brittany and their kind of whole community in Knoxville were starting up businesses. And so there was kind of little things to kind of like put my hands to and feel creative and support my friends, which was kind of the main priority at the time. Leah and I had lived in Knoxville for a year, but we kind of knew it wasn't a forever spot for us. It's really far from the beach. We always thought we would eventually get back to the beach, but we took a pit stop in Pennsylvania. Her brother-in-law and sister-in-law on the other side lived up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and there was an Apple store in Lancaster. So I just transferred up here. It's kind of a practical move at the time. And then we got pregnant. And that's kind of when stuff.
Surprise.
Yeah, right. We wanted to get pregnant. We didn't think it would happen as fast, which I know
Fast, yeah.
is can be complicated and difficult, and so we didn't think it would be that way for us, and it was, which we were very grateful for. But it kind of put us on our heels a little bit when we were like, oh, well, oh crap, like what are we going to do? I had gone to school for music business and production with my original attempt at getting a degree, but I dropped out in my junior year because I kind of realized it wasn't the right path for me. Um, And so, anyways, I was like, what are we going to do? And before Margot, our firstborn, was born, I decided to go back to school for design. So it was like all of the kind of like fun projects that I had been doing on the side kind of propelled me into knowing this is something I love. I'm 27 now. I feel like I can do this. It's going to be hard, but let's go for it. Before baby is 3 or 4 years old. So I went back to school for design, and that's kind of what locked us in here. So we moved for family, and then ended up staying. Family moved away. They moved to California, and then we just ended up staying here and kind of fell in love with it. Lancaster has it's a winsome, sweet, kind of a surprising city. It's very small, like 80,000 people in the primary city. It's old and historic, but it's super walkable. Has an awesome like farmers market. Has like tons of things to do. Great restaurants, great food. Um, and great climbing and hiking and stuff like that on the kind of outskirts of the city too. And I ride a motorcycle, and it's beautiful here. So it was just it kind of captured our attention in a way that was very surprising to us, because we always thought we would move back to the beach somewhere, maybe not Virginia Beach, but somewhere else. Yeah, once you have one kid and then you start adding more, eventually the place you are the longest ends up becoming home. So we just started piling on friends and deeper and deeper relationships, and so now it is home. We've been here for a decade, which is crazy.
I'm curious, you were saying that you moved to Lancaster, were starting to branch out into this creative career you're trying to pursue. You just had your first kid. Were you worried at all about like the stability of pursuing this creative career and building a business? Or did you, yeah, what did that look like with like family and friends? Were they supportive? Were you nervous about it? Or were you just like excited and ready to go all in?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the first thing I'll say is I kind of didn't know I didn't know anything. I was kind of just blind to a lot of different things and full of passion. Like I knew that this is something I loved. And so I think my MO at the time was like, I'm just going to go all in. I didn't even really set out to be a designer. I just knew I wanted to be in the creative industry and kind of be a part of a team that sews into like a really strong creative output. So whether that was design or not really wasn't my goal. Again, I was already 27 going back to school for design. So I was kind of like, I'll do it. I'll be a project manager. I'll kind of do whatever it takes. And my family was wildly supportive. Like, I mean, like I said, Nathan and Brittany like bought me a computer and were like super encouraging into getting into it. A lot of our friends were too. And that time actually going back to school was really, really hard. I was working full time at a retail store I'd left Apple, gone into school full time, worked full time at a retail store, kind of leading sales and marketing. That retail store was owned by an agency, a really great agency in the branding space called Infantry. Um, and so I kind of like learned from a ton from those guys and kind of built some confidence just kind of being around them that like this is a great industry. This is definitely a space I can find opportunity in. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think there was any fear necessarily attached to it yet.
Mhm.
There's definitely
That came later.
yeah, school is tough. I mean, going back to school is really hard because again, it was probably like 100-hour weeks, and I had a baby and a wife, and I mean, it was a really intense season. So we don't have any family here, and so our friend group really stepped up. They were super encouraging, and in some ways, Leah was like a single mom during that time, and I feel like our friends just kind of surrounded and supported us a ton. Then when I graduated, and kind of like stepped out infantry because I had already been working with them. Um, they were kind of like a safe space for me to land. I was pretty much mirroring what I had made at Apple. So it wasn't like I stepped into some wild, awesome career financially, but I was
Uh-huh.
actually getting to do what I loved. And so they started a retail store and I helped do kind of everything for it, from like planning photo shoots, merchandising the store physically, merchandising it digitally, managing Shopify, working on the Shopify theme. I did all of it. And so it was kind of a fun
Was
little,
that Ellicott?
yeah. Yep. So it was like a fun transition from Apple to essentially like a small little retail stint and then full time into design. So then I joined their team as a junior developer. for like 3 months. And I had started freelance designing because as opposed to like a 20-year-old coming out of design school, I had tons of friendships and tons of relationships that I had already fostered over time. And a lot of friends started hitting me up for work because they're like, "Hey, you're done with school. You have some time now. We would love, like, we want to work with you, Chris," which was so kind. And I eventually got to a place in like 3 months after graduating where I was like eclipsing what my salary was there, and then decided this is like the short story, but decided, okay, it's like time for me to step out on my own. And then I left Ellicott to kind of go out on my own for a little bit. So yeah. Anyways,
That's awesome. I mean, I love it. That's one of the reasons I really wanted to do this show, is just how often the career transitions and inflection points
yeah,
are just those things you can't plan, going from Apple working retail to something else where you're more in the creative space that you want to be in, but still in retail, and working with an agency, and then that leads to the next thing, and so on and so forth.
yeah. I do feel like that's life. It's like a series of serendipitous kind of like moments. I feel like where one thing leads to the next thing. And certainly, I mean, we try to build like these rule books on how it's supposed to be. I mean, would it have been nice to know what I wanted to go to school for at like 18 years old? I think that
Yeah.
would have been awesome. And if I like fully knew who I was, and if I like stepped into, an agency role at 19, I'm sure it would have been really beneficial. But I think at the same time, there's no rules too. And I think that that's actually something I think about often, is like all of Thread actually feels like kind of like poking at the stereotypical kind of like agency path. Like even Zach, he went to school, got a degree in like Christian thought and psychology, and has like no background in it, and never worked at an agency at all. And here we are figuring it out. And maybe again, it would have been beneficial to have some of that experience, which we can get to. But I do feel like there's something nice about kind of like removing that idea and saying, okay, like if there really isn't any rules, what are the things that I care about and am motivated by for my life? And what can I kind of like take some steps towards? That's really what me going back to school for design represented. Before that was a lot of confusion and a lot of like, I don't know, feeling like I needed to figure out my career and figure out so much of my
Mhm.
life all at once. There was a lot of questions around like, what's my purpose or something like that, these big existential questions. And the second those like fell to the side and I kind of like freed myself up a little bit, that's when I was like, I'm just going to go after what I love. And but I do think having a kid is a really galvanizing experience for making those
Yes.
decisions. There's probably a couple movies that follow that story arc, but um, yeah, I think I'm really grateful for it. I wouldn't trade it at this point.
Yeah. Which, yeah, it's interesting you mentioned school and degrees, and you were already doing design, but you chose to go back to school and study design. I'm curious to hear you just share a little bit about why you chose to do that, especially if you're doing 100-hour weeks, like you said.
I know. I think about it often. I mean, we all know that you don't have to go to school to do what we all do, especially right now. Design school is really expensive. So when we got pregnant with Margot, again, I'm older, I'm excited about design, and I'm design aware too. Like I already know who all the best, I already know where the best schools are, and I know what the best agencies are. And so my thought and desires at that moment were like, maybe I move my family to Rhode Island and I go to RISD, or maybe I go down to Philly and go to Temple, or in Virginia there's VCU in Richmond, and all these great schools. But it all felt really impractical. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I have a high regard for design education. I had just always been interested in it. One of my friends was a professor at UT, Matt Culver. He taught furniture design and was in the architecture department. And
Wait, you know Matt Culver too? Literally, I know Matt Culver, like
well,
you
he
said.
lives in Chattanooga now, doesn't he?
Yes, he's a friend of mine. He works at Branch
I know, which
Technologies.
that cannot be a whiteboard project. That's a thread project. I called dibs. I've been, I'm kidding.
You've been courting them longer? Yeah, we'll
I
let you
literally
have it.
call him once a month. I hope he listens to this. I love him and I just want to know how he's doing. And I also really, really want to do work for Branch because it's such a cool company. They
No,
for
I
those that are
literally saw
listening,
him this weekend.
they 3D print like the raddest houses and
Yeah.
structural
And
stuff.
like art
Yeah,
installments,
it's so
and
cool.
yeah. And
Um,
Matt is just a brilliant, crazy individual. So Matt, I'm gonna make sure that I send this to you and give you this
he's
shout out.
gonna freak out. He's gonna freak out. That's awesome. He was a huge advocate for me getting into design too. I'll call that out now. Um,
That's cool.
but yeah, I think I had like a high regard for it. I also knew confidence is a big part of our world, you know. It's kind of crazy how much like the way we present ourselves and the confidence that we have
Yeah,
in our work is, I think a majority, and this is like a huge broad generalization, but a majority of designers struggle with imposter syndrome and feel insecure
definitely.
about their work. I definitely do, you know. And so I knew there was just never a part of me being exposed to what I was exposed to that would have felt comfortable selling work with the amount of ignorance I had to people. You know, I
Yeah.
would have rather have sold my friends at the infantry or other agencies work before my own because I know how much better it is. And I appreciate what they do, and they're so thoughtful, and there's process, and there's education, you know, kind of backing it. So I just knew I wouldn't have felt comfortable freelancing just out of my design practice. Um, and just me exploring like what I could do on Illustrator, that just didn't feel like enough. So I called around. I actually talked to people at RISD. I talked to people at VCU, and then it just felt like unwise to move and to like uproot my family, move to like a place where we would have no family support at all, and like go to school full time and try to find a way to pay our bills. So I called up the local community college just to kind of hear about their program. And I talked to this lady, Marjana Talebi, who she's a MICA grad from the 90s. And she's, I think Iranian, I forget. She's a female designer from the 80s and 90s who is like, I can only she's just the most badass designer I know.
That's so
She's like
awesome.
big into photo collage and stuff like that. She's awesome. So she was on the board for Pennsylvania College of Art and Design, and then also leads the interactive design program at the community college. So I just called her up and then had a little bit of an email exchange and was just like, listen, I care a lot about this. If I'm going back to school, I want this to be like really serious. I would prefer to go to like a bigger school, but I can't. So what does like the community college have to offer? And she was just like, you know, this is what we have to offer, but here's what I can promise you. I'm going to push you. And so I tell people a lot, like, truthfully, the program was exactly what I expected. You know, you go into the development classes, they teach you HTML and CSS out of a book. You know, it's very basic. But the things that I feel like the design education was helpful for is I got to like present my work and I got critiqued by Marjana weekly. And she would destroy my work with the red pen. And she would push on all of my ideas, every idea she pushed on. So I feel like what I paid for in time and money was like really just developing my eye and kind of building confidence. I mean, I didn't know it. It felt like I was losing confidence every presentation, but building
Yeah.
confidence and building my eye through just kind of repetition with her. So I'm very grateful. I do portfolio reviews still at the school just because of how much I appreciate what she kind of sewed into me. But yeah, I think what I gained coming out of it as even an older like person coming out of design school was like, oh, I just feel so much more confident diving into this space now. I feel more confident going into interviews if I want to interview for an agency, defending my work and my ideas and my thoughts. But especially on the freelance side, I felt like, okay, I have a bit more of a process and a bit more defense around why I do what I do and the way it should kind of go. Everything felt like I was shooting in the dark before it. And I feel like after school, it kind of felt like I just, it's not like it blew my mind. It's not like it gave me totally new information on how to do things. It just affirmed the things that needed to be affirmed and or, you know, did expose like a new way of doing things too. So yeah, sorry, that's like a long-winded answer there, but
No, that's
it
awesome.
was
I love
definitely
that.
worth it. I still kind of wish, even right now, I would sign up to go. I would be like a lifetime student in design. It's such a fun practice, you know, to kind of like explore and experiment with. And now I don't really design as much, unfortunately. But um, yeah, school is worth it. I believe that still.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's the first time I've heard that take about design school and the value of it being about helping you with taste making, building your perspective, getting your perspective challenged by people that you respect and appreciate. And it's kind of like how I hear a lot of people say when you're looking for a new company to work at or making a transition, look for leaders and companies that you respect that have values that you want to see in your workplace and leaders that lead the way you hope to be led. And target those types of companies. Don't just like look for the next career advancement, but look, and you kind of took that same approach with design school and knowing that there would be somebody that you could learn from and really benefit from their perspective challenging you. I think that's really cool. Um, I'm curious to hear you share a bit about that transition. You even kind of teed it up a little bit.
Sure.
You made a transition from designing to creative directing a bit more
Sure.
in recent years. And yeah, we haven't really touched on joining Thread and what that journey looked like. I'd love to hear you share a bit about that and
Yeah.
making that dreaded maker manager transition.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of fun just to say out loud. The reason you and I met is because I generally feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. So I reached out to you to
Same.
kind of build some more confidence, if you will, around some of those things like process and project management, people management, and whatnot. But yeah, I left infantry Ellicott stuff and then started freelancing, and then another Knoxville connection. Do you know Austin Church?
The name sounds familiar, but I'm not placing it right now.
Okay, well that he hit me up for a few freelance projects, and eventually he offered he hit me up and was like, "I would love to start a business with you," which 3 months out of school and 3 months after being at another kind of like sales, marketing, design role, kind of felt like crazy and wild. And he was like, I have ran a marketing agency for a decade and I would love to level up. You know, I'd love to build a team. I'd love to be more brand minded and more creatively minded. And so him and I started a branding and marketing company in, I guess this would have been 2017, 2018. And so I did that for a year and a half. And eventually him and I just got to a place where the business, like a lot of our revenue started to taper off. That's for a lot of different stories in there. We stopped
Hmm.
working with a private equity company, and there's some different things. But we eventually got to a place where I had no backup plan, and by this point, we had actually decided. I mean, we had our third kid on the way, so it was like I need to find a way. Like I need to pivot. I need to go find a job, go work at an agency or something like that, or a product spot, or I don't know what. So I happened to be working in the same space as Zach at Thread, and he was just kind of a person who's like he had the studio and I rented like a desk from him kind of thing. And he kind of became a close friend over that time. We pretty much had a whole year of working side by side because my business partner and I were remote from each other. And um, he was like, "Hey, dude, I have a couple film projects that I could bill you in on, like to just fill the financial bucket for your family. Would you be keen?" And I went on one film project with him and was like, "Oh, this is awesome." We have a lot of similar convictions around creative work and around how we serve clients, very similar values, same season of life. It kind of just felt like easy. And so kind of, I left that other business partnership and then joined Thread. And it was definitely a crazy transition. For the first 2 years of Thread, it was pretty much just Zach and I running parallel to each other, him handling all film projects and making sure that those clients are taken care of, me doing design and digital work, and obviously, even doing brand strategy, and him and I both handling copy on occasion. Sometimes he would come in. We we discovered really quickly, at least in my opinion, this is a hot take. I actually think film directors are closet brand strategists. They're like the best listener.
Yep,
Uh,
100%.
yeah, they're so good at listening and then finding and pulling out like the best little nuances and kind of things for positioning and kind of differentiation. Zach's superpower is he's like the best listener, which I feel like too often people are not that way in our industry. They got all the answers. Um, so yeah, we would kind of serve each other and support each other. Sometimes I go on set, run the sound bag and run audio. Sometimes I would help lead interviews on occasion. And then yeah, slowly but surely projects eventually got to rates where we were like, oh, we don't have to work 60 hours this week.
Mhm.
We could bring in someone else. We could, so on and so forth. So eventually, yeah, we've slowly over the last 5 years, added to the team. Currently, the makeup of the team is we have 3 designers, 1 creative developer, a producer, and then Zach directing and myself. So I say I'm a creative director, and the real honest, transparent moment is small business is really hard, and I wear like 50 hats in any given
Totally.
moment. I'm probably more of an account manager than anything else, like sales and account management. And then I design still. And then when there are moments to share opinions about design, that's when I feel like I wear the creative director hat, but it's
Yeah.
definitely not to the degree that I want it to be, which everybody's listening right now, but they would probably all nod their heads too. So I feel like depending on the moment and conversation, like I'm like I'm a perfectionist. Like I want to do one thing extremely well. So it is hard, just personality wise, and being in small business, because I feel like I do 10 things not well at all. Like I feel like I'm just spread over a bunch of stuff, but I feel like Thread's maturing and it's getting to a place where we're needing more systems and more processes, and the teams and the complexity of our work is getting to a place, and the rates of our work are finally getting to a place where we can say specialized role, specialized role, specialized role, so on and so forth. So I'm excited about taking off some hats and putting on the appropriate hats, but uh, I feel like my honest answer is I don't know if I'm a creative director. It just happens to be the most appropriate title to put in a LinkedIn bio and at the bottom of my email.
Yeah.
I'm probably the one with the loudest opinions about creative, is the more honest thing to put in there. Maybe I should put VP of Creative Ops, or what's yours? Yours is a really good one.
My titles changed so many times. I identify so much with what you're saying about the creative director hat and account manager, and um, in fact, our creative director, I would say he's been at Whiteboard longer than even I have, and his name's Cody Dahl. He's just amazing.
Yeah.
Love working with Cody, and I had a team member that was a senior designer that I promoted into a creative director role. And one day, Cody blew my mind when he said, before Jose was a creative director for that team, you were the creative director. I was like, no, I wasn't. He's like, no, you were. And he just like walked out all these reasons why. And he was just like, essentially, it was, we tend to think of creative direction as small d design, visual design,
Yeah.
versus capital D, solving problems with design and solving problems and communicating and storytelling and creative strategy and brand strategy, all these things. And he's like, were you doing research and strategy and preparation and all these things to be able to give the right feedback in the right moment and guide the project and guide the client and blah blah blah. I was like, yeah, I guess I was. He's like, sounds like a creative director to me. So I'll give you the same pep talk that
Thank
Cody
you.
gave me, because it sounds like you're doing all those things.
Yeah.
What's different is my background was mostly in marketing roles. Yours has actually been in practicing design. So I even identify a little bit with some of that insecurity you might have felt when you started studying design, where you're like, man, to like advance in a career in the creative space, do I need to study design? Do I? Because I've often said I feel like I was immersed in design through Whiteboard, but rather than going to design school, I went to design school through Whiteboard and being exposed to it in so many ways.
Yeah, I think part of my feelings are because I hold the title in such high regard. Like you
Hmm.
said about Cody. I mean, I have friends that operate in a creative director role right now, and I look up to them so much. Like they have had a decade or more experience than I have had, and they've really cut their teeth to that place, to get to that place. Whereas my path is like very, very different, and therefore because I wasn't like knighted into a creative director role, I'm
Sir
always like,
Chris.
I don't know, again, we live in a time where like anyone on Instagram can say they're a creative director. And so that's
Totally.
like another reason why I feel that way. It's like, well, I would rather my peers call me something and that be my title than me just give myself that. I don't know. Again, this is like, I know you're not a counselor, so this is like a different conversation for a different place. But I feel like that's what motivates that for me is like, okay, well, I'm very happy to be here. Our team is incredible. Like we're doing great work. I feel like I'm less concerned about that stuff. But I or for myself personally, like what my title is and all that. But I know that we're just getting to a place now where it's of the utmost importance. Like our design team and our creative, like it's great, but it won't get better without kind of like deeper strategy and kind of leadership on that. And same with sales. Like our sales won't grow, and our marketing and our kind of like pipeline of relationships won't continue to grow or be healthy without someone kind of stewarding that and leading that. Our client hospitality and the way we run projects and our resourcing and planning, which you and I have already talked about, will not be
Hmm.
healthy until there's someone like leading that. And I feel like that's across the board. But when you get into this, it's like, I mean, we don't have, there's no funding. We're just making it happen one step at a time. So I look at where we were 2 years ago or even 1 year ago. I'm like, wow, we have changed so much and we're growing so much. Every project, every team member is like a level up for us at this point. So it does feel like I'm slowly starting to move into that stage. But I think the question that motivates what's my role, kind of now, it's almost like a daily thing, but it's just kind of asking, what does the business need right now? If we have a
Oh,
bunch of
totally.
if we have a bunch of client work that like needs to get done, that's like specific to where I can support. I'm a designer today, and I'll literally ask the team for critique on my work. If it's sales, then it's going to be sales, and it's proposal building, and it's relationships and conversations. So I feel like that's been a big transition, kind of moving out of design more and kind of saying, okay, am I willing to lay design down? Number one, and what are the things I'm willing to pick up and support on? We I'm not saying this because they can hear me, but Kaiser on our team and Susanna are such great designers that I have found that it's easier for me to let go of that, even though I care deeply about it. Like I said earlier, like I never set out to be the world's best designer. I just want to do great creative work. So I think what I've started to learn with being on a team is there are people who care as much or more than I do about certain things, and I can trust them to do what they do best and then find what I can do best kind of within that. I think I'm still learning that. I think we're all still learning that to some degree. But I feel like yeah, that's kind of the season we're in right now is asking ourselves those kind of questions. Like what are each of us like really great at and what do we want to steward? And, specifically for myself, what does the business need right now? And like how can I support that so that things stay healthy and where they should be? So I don't know if that answers your question in like the best way, but I feel like it's not this clean break between just creative work and now like people management or something as much as I wish it was, because that would be really fun. I'm just going to build creative culture and find out new ways to kind of like lead just that. That'd be sweet. One day we're going to be there.
Well, I mean, and you're doing that as well because the hat you're ultimately wearing is the co-founder, business owner hat, so that's why you're going to wear so many different ones throughout your any given day, probably.
Yeah, right.
Um,
Yeah,
which
most of my days are like that.
I'm curious too. So Zach is the only other partner, right, or co-founder at
Yep.
Thread. What was that dynamic like with you guys starting a business together? Like you already mentioned that there's some real strengths that you see with Zach. Like one you mentioned is his secret weapon is he's a great listener. You said, what are some of the ways that you guys kind of augment and supplement each other's work beyond just the background in, design versus filmmaking and that sort of thing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I hope everything I say he would agree with. That's the first thing. And I hope that it's fair. It's kind of like if someone asked me something about my wife and she'd be like, "I don't agree with that." Like that's not who I am. But I think just at like really basic levels, Zach's introverted, I'm extroverted. Zach's a great listener. I'm a rambler. Like there's some like really basic personality differences that kind of play into that. but I think when it came to just like the business and supporting the business, Zach is similar to me in that he's willing to lay down whatever he needs to be a part of a great team and do whatever it takes. That has looked like even him saying like, I'm not going to build a film production studio. Like he decided and said, even though I love documentary filmmaking and story driven kind of commercial work, I actually see a vision around like broader creative work and serving clients this way. So he kind of shares, I think, that same sentiment of like, I want to build a great team. I'm open handed with what that looks like, and I want to do great creative work. I'm also open handed to how that looks like in a way. I think it's that's not to say we don't have conviction around what that can look like, but I think we're both okay with kind of like augmenting to a degree, and seeing what that could look like. Um, because I was coming out of like a previous business partnership and Zach was coming into his first one, uh, I really felt like I still very much believe like friends can do business together. Zach had become a friend over a year of just working side by side and supporting each other. And I think going into the business partnership, I think my heart was just like, how do we find a way to honor each other through this, make sure each other feel heard, from a financial standpoint, like business operations standpoint, but really just on the day to day and stuff like that too. So I think we've developed. Yeah, I think we just have like simple patterns. You know, we meet weekly every Monday morning to chat through the business stuff. Zach handles all the operations of Thread. I think
Hmm.
that's by nature of being. I think some of it's just because he started Thread before I joined, and so he had already been in
Yeah.
the habit of a lot of business ops. We've leveled up in some ways. You know, now we have an accountant and bookkeeping and stuff like that, which we didn't have initially. So his workload was more in that space before, but he still kind of manages our finances and whatnot, for the most part. And then he still does a lot of sales. So much of our sales right now is it's relational and word of mouth. So we don't have any.
Always.
Yeah, like, and I don't know if we ever will have like cold. Well, I shouldn't say never to anything. I'll do whatever it takes. But I don't know if we'll ever do like traditional like outbound sales ever. So really, all of it is like account management and kind of like stewarding relationships. I feel like he does a ton of that. We have some really great relationships on the film side that he runs and manages. But I feel like the lion's share of our clients are on the design and digital side. Uh, from a volume standpoint, not a financial
Hmm.
standpoint. So I tend to be the more outward facing salesperson of Thread, at present moment. And I think part of that is just personality, not necessarily skill set. He's really great at that stuff too. I think listening makes you a great salesperson when you're positioning solutions to creative problems. But he's really great at that too. So yeah, we kind of augment each other in those different ways. I think the team, if it was just me all the time, I don't know if anyone would be here. Zach's like level headed. He's very like collected, wise beyond his years. So I feel like not that I'm not those things. I'm not like, falling, I'm not like super emotional and all over the place, but I do feel like he just has like a groundedness about him and a maturity about
Hmm.
him that I think a lot of us appreciate. So anyways, yeah, we carry some differences there. I feel like a lot of our conversations are wrestling matches. We both dream a lot and dream with our clients. We've had some opportunities for more equitable relationships with our clients and, dreaming more long-term partnerships with our clients. And those opportunities are really cool, but it's been nice to kind of have a partner to temper the excitement or kind of just the emotions of those things and to kind of think
Yep.
through all the kind of like nuances of them. So I've really appreciated it a ton, just kind of having someone side by side in the mix too. we Our team tends to have a big voice into those things too. We have an open floor plan. We don't have a siloed office at our current stage, which, well, that's why I'm having this podcast and everyone can listen to me. So it has its drawbacks. It definitely has its
I
drawbacks.
love I love all the cautious glances you keep giving to the side.
Yeah, exactly. Like, do you agree? Do you agree with this, guys? But yeah, I think we tend to augment each other well, and I think the team appreciates that a lot. We I don't know, this is kind of an aside, but we did also decide to kind of like pivot some of our financial model at Thread. We do like a profit share, of like our profits over the year across the team as well. So obviously Zach and I carry equity in the business, which is we've kind of decidedly said equity means nothing. Like it means nothing and it means everything all at the same time. It means everything when it needs to mean something, but a lot of times in our type of work, it kind of doesn't mean much. And it's not. I think what I've also found is it's not the primary motivator for everyone. You know, it can be, and so uh, I think there's just numerous ways to kind of like incentivize and to kind of encourage like great work. And so we started the profit share program 2 years ago, even though we're really small, just because our team is so awesome and it felt like a really great way to honor all their effort, but also kind of create a financial model within the business that would encourage really great people to actually want to work with a small studio in Lancaster. We're nothing without our team. Like Zach and I are just two people, and so in order, I feel like the best creatives in 2025 could freelance. All of us could freelance. So why tie like some great creatives together? Why do that? And it can't just be culture. That's like been the MO of like every creative agency and studio for a long time. I think there should be financial upside too. And so I can say that the team is not primarily, I feel like it's okay to say that the team feels like it's not primarily motivated by financial upside, but it is like a wonderful satisfier, I would say, um, to the team, just as those efforts increase and our projects increase. That is not an original idea. We stole that from Hugh at Sanctuary and really loved, kind of the model that he built there. His is like way more his is like over engineered. It's super smart. He built like an algorithm for the talent pool and how they disperse profits and stuff like that. Ours is the caveman version of it, but it's really awesome too. So yeah. Anyways, that's a kind of an aside to your question, but felt like appropriate.
I love that. I think this is really cool too that it's because you've spent so much time building kind of ventures, trying different risks and taking different uh, not unconventional paths in your journey, but ones that aren't just as straightforward, maybe as I was a designer on this team in house at a company for 5 years. And that's how you cut your teeth in freelancing and launching ventures and starting a studio and joining a studio. And I think it's really interesting to even think about creativity from that perspective of creating business that is beautiful and redemptive, which it really feels like is what you're all about at the end of the day. Um, and yeah, I'm curious, like, if there's any advice you wish that, like, something you've learned from somebody else. Maybe it was your professor, maybe it was a business mentor or somebody you looked up to, but just something that you're like, man, if I had known this 3, 5 years ago, it could have saved me a lot of heartache, or it would have been so beneficial. And now it's like a thing that you latch onto as something you like to tell others.
I wish I was that kind of reflective and thoughtful. I don't have like a grab bag of like quotes or anything like that kind of like summarize those things well. What drives great design is empathy. And so the thing that I appreciate about my journey into this is that by having like a diverse kind of like path into it, it's allowed me to collect stories, and collecting those stories along the way, I think has allowed me to ultimately get to know our clients and get to know the problems we're solving in an intimate way. Because in some cases, I've actually been on the other side of those things too. Now, that isn't to say that's the case with every client, but I think the more that we can kind of collect stories and learn ourselves and kind of like operate out of that humility, I think that that'll drive like great creative solutions, great hospitality with our clients, and ultimately lead to just better work all around. Um, so that was like the first thought that came to mind. um, I don't, the sum of who I am as a creative, as a designer, as a dad, as a business owner, uh, is the sum of like everyone's thoughts. Like, I mean, I literally reached out to you. I've reached out to so many people online and just said, "Hey, I have no idea what I'm doing. Would you want to talk?" And I've really appreciated the generosity of so many people. I wish I could pull out quotes right now of just individuals. I mean, I wrote down so many notes when you and I talked. Uh, And that has been my whole life. Coaches, pastors, people in my life that have just cared enough, and I've asked enough questions. So I definitely think if I had to encourage anyone with anything, it's like just kind of like operate out of humility and ask a lot of questions and be curious. Like the second we feel like we've arrived at something is the second we start to lose our footing. And at least in my life, it's been really beneficial to kind of just operate out of that posture and kind of continue to learn. Thankfully, my journey has kind of forced me to be that way, where I can't really build an ego because, well, I I'm still learning. There's so much to learn. I don't feel like I've mastered it all.
Which, I mean, even that is a lesson or advice that I think so many people, especially early in their career, need to know, that so many people are so much more willing to share what they have learned and the hard knocks of their life that they've walked through to help others. And I mean, I've experienced the same thing with so many people, or even client relationships that have developed into friendships and mentors and things like that, where I was just like, man, I really respect this person and the way that they lead. I don't know if they'd be open to it, but I'm going to reach out and see if they'd be open to just meeting more regularly, sharing some of what they've learned, how to lead a team, how to lead a business. And I've never had somebody that's just been like, nope, sorry, not interested, don't have time for that. There might be some boundaries they have to draw about their time. And that's also a good lesson to learn, but they're always willing to at least exchange a little bit of that knowledge, I feel like.
Yeah, definitely agree. Yeah, there's again too many countless people to name. Some of which in Knoxville, and
Matt Culver.
Matt Culver is one of them for sure. He literally took me into the architecture department. We built a chair together, and that was like my
Amazing.
first little foray into like design thinking and the design process. Like,
So cool.
yeah, he's a legend. So he's definitely one of those people. Which he's a professor by trade. It's a little unfair. It's like his job
Yeah.
to teach people, but there's just so many things like that. Um, Something that so this morning I actually met with a friend here, used to be head of marketing at Passenger, that coffee company we had worked with.
Mm-hmm.
We were meeting because he actually is like jumping into marketing agency world and just kind of processing, catching up on life. And um, he has like very strict boundaries with work-life balance and time and stuff like that. Which I've already shared that there was a season of my life where I was working like 100 hours a week, which is
Mm-hmm.
crazy. Which part of it was cool. Something that him and I were talking about that I think is probably also worth sharing is like there's just so many different seasons to in your career, and I think he's really struggling with like what it just needs to be perfect. Like I have to have the perfect work life balance right now, and I was just telling him like it kind of doesn't exist. Like you need to kind of let go of that. Not that you need to live in an unhealthy manner, but there's a season to really work hard, and then there's a season to rest. And it kind of came out of this anecdotal conversation I had with a friend where I was kind of really, I mean, it was during school, and I felt like I was going to have a panic attack because I was just working so much. And he was like, Chris, like it work life balance doesn't exist. It's more about ballast, like a boat, like
Mm-hmm.
there are these things that are going to rock and, kind of t- tilter or lean to one side. Tilter's not a word. You can delete that out. Tilt towards one side in one season of life, and then the next season it's going to be different, and that is definitely what I felt. I got through school, which that was like a decided, like this is a finite amount of time, and I'm going to take this sacrifice, and then that led to better life balance on the other side, and that happens a lot in our kind of work, especially if you don't have a ton of retainers and you're like in the project world. You can certainly there can be an unhealth and you can say yes to too much too often or something like that, but in a lot of cases it's like, man, sometimes work is really heavy and you're cranking on stuff, and maybe there's some late nights in there, and then there's some times where you're like, we don't have enough work right now, and it's better to
Mm-hmm.
just enjoy both for what they are in and when they are happening. So ballast is this idea that I've really held on to as well, especially I have 4 kids now. Our team is growing, thread is still growing. There's always the temptation to kind of be here more, if I really wanted to be. And it's just been good to kind of keep that perspective of going, what is this season, and what does Thread need? What does my family need? What do I need? And how do I kind of like adjust to that accordingly, versus trying to fit it compartmentally into these like perfect, you know,
Mhm.
boxes of what I think it's supposed to be. Okay, that was my
That's
last.
awesome.
That's my last thing.
No, it's awesome. Yeah, well, and Chris, thank you so much for your time, man. It's been so fun.
Yeah.
Um, I could think of a million other questions I want to ask you. Maybe I'll just need to do this again sometime, or I need to make a trip up to Lancaster and
Yeah.
just hang out with you guys for the day or something.
Yeah, that anytime, open door policy. We have open desks here. Also, I need to come down to Chattanooga and kick it too.
Yeah.
If
Well,
I,
especially if you know so many people in the Southeast.
well, my mother-in-law and Leah's dad, mother-in-law, father-in-law live in Knoxville, so I should just hit you up next time I'm down there.
Yes, please do.
All right. Well, thanks for inviting me on, man. I definitely don't ever want to do this again, but you're the best person to do it with. So thank you.
I'm honored. It's been awesome.
If you made it this far, thanks for listening. You can subscribe on all of the usual suspects, and I hope to catch you on the next one. But in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Wherever you are in your life and your work, I'm cheering you on.